do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
I'd like just to start off by saying good morning to all who have decided to join the program today, the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. The show is also called the CR, the CS, but we welcome you to the broadcast November the 30th, 2021. Where has the month gone? November the 30th, 2021. Greetings to everyone all around the planet. Thank you for tuning in, and we appreciate that you have decided to spend some time with Mr. Fuller and myself, Mr. Bobby, the co-host. Welcome again. If you would like to get in contact with the show, you can do so by calling this number. Yeah, my screen would do that at this particular moment. But anyway, here it is, 516-453-9921. And if you would like to be a show participant, just simply press the number 1 button, and you will get in line and wait patiently until you are called upon. I would ask that whatever you have to say, please make it brief so that Mr. Fuller can fully understand what you are saying. And if you have a VGQ the same way, please do not spend 15,000 minutes explaining your point. You don't have to be all that analytical. Just get it out so that Mr. Fuller can answer your question. And please, ma'am, please, sir, make sure that you direct all of your questions to Mr. Fuller so that he can answer your questions. And that would be good. Okay, let's see. What else do I have to do here? Oh, yeah, let me give a shout-out to the wonderful people down in Florida. Yes, Marilyn Pollard. Yes, thank you for your hospitality. As you put up, you put up your sister, Bonnie, who I think is in the air by now. But thank you, for that, Marilyn Pollard down in Florida. I said I would do that. And Marilyn, just for you, I'm going to have Mr. Fuller recite something since you are a new listener. And some people have asked Mr. Fuller this question, and we will get to this question. But to the new people that are listening in, there are going to be some things said today that you may not agree with, and that is okay. We're not here to argue with you. But if you have a disagreement, make sure that you use logic. As a matter of fact, logic in everything that is said today. You're going to hear some terms today. You may hear, I don't know. You may hear terms like the 4 once. You may hear terms like VGQ. But whatever it is, make sure that if you have a question it logically so you could obtain the answer to those particular questions. If you get mad, that's okay. Get mad, but be logical about that. Be reasonable. Deduct if you have used deductive reasoning, if you may. And hopefully I'll get to you. You can also Gmail me if you would like. I would not do that because I'm just really backed up with that. But if you chose to do that, here's the email address, or Gmail address. It's the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. You do that, then it'll go into rotation also, and I try to read as many as I can, given the time frame, because I have a streaming clock on now, so thank you. You can also join the chat room, and already there are many in the chat room. Emery Lumumba, Helen B. 69 is in there, Invisible Negro is there, Produce 21 is there, and Rita 888 is there already. There are so many that are in there, and WeChat is just joined there. You can get on that, and all you have to do is, I understand, go to the Blog Talk Radio .com, and under programs, you can go to the Produce Justice Show. And once you click on that, then I think there's a button that you can get in on the chat. And occasionally I will read a chat or give you some information that's going on in the chat room. So thank you. All righty. I think I got all the house cleaning out of the way. So let me start off again by saying good morning, Mr. Fuller, and how are you this day?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Okay, very, very good. Mr. Fuller, I've heard you mention this on many shows, and some of the stuff that you say has been repeated, but we have new members and new people calling in all the time. And as a matter of fact, Facebook has sent me the analytics of and demographic breakdown of people who are listening, women in particular, men, and the different age groups, and I am pleased to announce that it is up and coming, up and rising. I'm just astounded by that. But one of the things that we were having a discussion this week on the Pledge of Allegiance and the Universal Pledge. Now, this Universal Pledge is a pledge that you made up, and for those who have never heard this, and for those who are new, Marilyn, this is for you, and since you're a new listener. Mr. Fuller has a universal pledge that will satisfy everything in terms of a flag when it comes to a flag. Mr. Fuller, could you say or repeat the universal pledge for our new listeners that are listening in, and then why you came up with that?
Well, it's a compensatory universal pledge, and I came up with it because people were having a lot of controversy about whether to salute the flag or kneel to it or give it a knee or stand and don't salute it or turn your back on it. And this caused a lot of what I consider to be unnecessary controversy. And so I thought about what they call the salute or the pledge of allegiance to what they call the United States flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, or for America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, sometimes people added that, with liberty and justice for all, or words of that effect. And people said they had problems with that. And then there are pledges to other flags, and whether or not, what flag to fly, what they call the Confederate flag. A lot of people say that's the real American flag, and the other American flag, or they're both equal, or one is a little better than the other, or both of them are to be considered within their own time frame, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you see a Confederate flag, if you're black, you're supposed to ask for it to be torn down or taken down, et cetera, et cetera. So back and forth about flags, lots of back and forth. And then you have to consider all of the flags that have been made by all of the people of the planet. The Brazilian flag, what about that? The Romanian flag, the Grecian flag, the Nazi flag, the swastika, Third Reich. Can't display that anywhere, or if you do, or maybe you should display it some places. And back and forth and back. So I said, well, I'm going to come up with a compensatory pledge, rather. And I come up with a compensatory flag that's actually in the textbook for victims of white supremacy. The compensatory universal flag is a question mark. And why did I adopt that as a compensatory flag that a person can adopt and pledge allegiance to anywhere or any time that they're on the planet, and it shouldn't be controversial because question marks, if once you explain to people who've never seen one, you just say, well, that's a question mark. And they'll say, well, what's a question mark? Say, well, it's any time you're trying to find out something that you don't know. So everybody on the planet doesn't know something that they need to know, because all problems are solved, this is the logic, through the process of questions and answers. So years ago I came up with a compensatory universal flag, and that was in the form of a question mark that you can add to a flagpole anywhere. After they put 2 or 3 other flags up at the top, you can put the question mark down at the bottom. And what will that symbolize? That will symbolize that you're raising a question about what the other flags mean, or whether they should mean anything at all, or what do they mean. It's whatever question you want to ask, because it's a universal flag that fits everybody. Animals ask questions all day long. Should I go to this tree or that tree to look for some food? Should I go south or north? A bird will ask that before they make a move. And then the bird will answer him or herself or itself. So that's the universal flag itself. Now, the universal pledge is as follows, and it will fit anywhere at any time. You can try it. And it's in the textbook for victims of white supremacy. Here it is. I do at all times relate to the flag the exact same way that the flag relates to me. I'm going to repeat that. I do at all times relate to the flag the exact same way that the flag relates to me. And if you think about that logically, yes. What flag? Any flag. Someone can say, hey, pledge allegiance to our flag over there. And you look up, and if you're black, it might be the Nazi Party flag, Third Reich flag of Adolf Hitler, swastika. And the person puts a gun to your head and says, salute that flag, or pledge your allegiance to that flag. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Whomever. I do at all times relate to this flag, or the flag, the exact same way that this flag, the flag, relates to me. Even if the flag is flying on a flagpole, or is lying in the middle of the street, or it's buried under the ground, you can't even see it. You're still relating to it the way that it relates to you. Now, someone at some point may say, oh, you're being slick. Okay, all right. How does that flag relate to you? And you just repeat the same thing you said before. I do at all times relate to the flag the exact same way that the flag relates to me. You're answering the question. So if the person wants you to embellish the answer, saying, oh, I still think you're playing games. You're playing tricks now. How does that flag relate to you? And you'll say, well, since you insist that I say something else, since I've already answered the question, but I can say something else. I can suggest, I will answer the question, how does the flag relate to me? I will say, I don't know. But I will make a suggestion. You can ask the flag. Ask the flag how the flag relates to me. I mean, since you know the flag so well, you're all on a good chummy basis. I mean, have fun. And that's the best you can do.
Yes, sir. Okay.
And I think it will fit. Now, you might say, well, that's game plan. Well, let's look at this flag thing all together. People get killed about flags. Now, there's no reason, none, zero, in the realm of logic for a person to go marching in front of an army like they used to. And they had what they call a flag bearer. And if anybody shot the flag bearer and the flag fell out of his or her hands onto the ground, the next person that came across that flag in some armies, you pick up that flag and you keep going, marching forward. No rifle, no pistol, no sword, but you are the flag bearer. And you march forward with that flag until you are shot. Now, you're trading your existence on this planet for a flag. A piece of cloth, maybe, or whatever it's made out of. Now, a question might be asked. Is that logical? A person is, takes a lot of pains to put a person together. Whatever created people, meaning a creator, created people, hands, arms, all types of wiring called veins, feelings, able to hear, able to see. Just the eye itself is a wonderful thing put together. Now, is a person who dies for a flag, I'll die for the flag. Are you saying that that piece of cloth made in a factory is more valuable than you or another person, a breathing person? George Floyd, I can't breathe. A flag doesn't breathe, I don't guess. A flag is made to serve people, not the other way around. So when you're pledging allegiance, are you pledging allegiance to a piece of cloth? Or are you pledging allegiance to helping a person or a creature? These are questions. That's why I say the universal flag is a question mark. Just questions. And whoever wants to step forward and answer the questions can. But I'm saying the universal flag, until we find out about what the supreme flag is, whatever that is, in the universe, among all people, creatures, and things, what flag is superior to the creator of the universe? Someone might come up with that one, made out of something or another. I'll stick with the compensatory universal flag until we sort out the confusion. And everything in the code now is optional, including, you'll say, well, yeah, I just heard what Fuller said. I don't go with his nonsense. I'm going with what I've been doing. You can do that. I'm just saying this is a compensatory flag for people like myself who are confused and who is definitely not looking for an argument about a flag, any flag. I don't need that.
Yes, sir. And before we take our first call, when you use, for clarification purposes only, when you use the word compensatory, as you just did, what does that, logically speaking, what does that mean? when you use that word compensatory in this particular case to that flag? What do you mean?
Literally, compensatory just means making up for what's missing.
Okay.
And what's missing is clarity and a lack of confusion. That's what a question mark is about. When you put a question mark behind anything, it means there's not enough clarity. There's some confusion somewhere. Because not knowing and understanding calls for a question mark. And so you erase the question mark when there's no longer any confusion and or misunderstanding.
Yes, sir.
I think there's an old biblical saying that out of all thy getting, get understanding.
Get understanding, yes.
I've heard people say that.
Yes, sir.
And, so if you understand white supremacy, you're eliminating what? Confusion. So it's fewer question marks. There's a whole lot of question marks associated with race. People now saying, what is this CRT, this critical race theory? And, it's annoying me, or it's making me angry. And other people say, oh, no, it's right on point. It's what it's all about. So you got a whole lot of anger. And then you got people who say, well, what is it? I'm confused. That's a question mark.
Yes, sir.
And people say, well, it's a dangerous thing. And other people say it's not dangerous, it's just the truth. So, what is it? Is it or isn't it? Find the truth.
Oh,
but in order to get there, you have to raise questions.
Yes,
Universal flag, question mark.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. You're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. You can also call it the Concept Show. There's a lot of terms that you can use. If you're a first-time listener or new to the program, again, you will hear some terms that you will not, maybe not understand, but just give it a listen and listen to it logically to figure out and question to figure out what it is that you don't understand logically. If you got an opinion, make sure that that you use logic. Okay, let's go to Pennsylvania. Let's see, Stan, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please, sir.
Yes, sir. Good morning, gentlemen. I'm not sure, Mr. Fuller, if you ever answered this question before, so forgive me if you have. But I was just curious about in 1974 on Tony Brown's journal, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing had her legendary debate with William Shockley in regards to his pseudoscientific biological racism and eugenics and dysgenics of yesteryear. And my question is, did you help her prepare for that debate, and what are your recollections of that debate? And I'd like to stay on the line for the answer. Thank you once again, gentlemen.
All right.
I would like to see that broadcast again and a whole lot of other broadcasts that Dr. Wilson had, because I vaguely remember many of them that she has had, but I only vaguely remember a lot of things I participated in down through the years, because my memory doesn't serve me very well. So I couldn't answer most of the specifics of these programs. I couldn't answer any of the questions except specific questions that are already in the textbook for victims of white supremacy. But Dr. Wilson herself has said that she just took from the basic ideas, which is what my textbook was really all about and what the compensatory code is about. They're just ideas that I just throw out there, and people latch on to them, and Dr. Wilson did, and said, well, it's one thing about I like about the code is that it causes you to think about one thing that will lead to another thing that you'll think about, that will lead to another thing that you'll think about, and on and on and on. She said just all kinds of ideas come out of just one or two things that, Neely Fuller puts in his code. And that's the way it's supposed to work. You're supposed to come up with ideas of your own. And Dr. Wilson did that.
And people have this habit of following people. And that's one of the first ideas I put out under the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept. I said the individual person is extremely potentially powerful. But don't get wrapped up in a person. Get wrapped up in what is the person doing? What did the person say? That's where the powerful is. Everything. The power is in what you do and say. Anybody can drive a truck. They can drive a truck. Why? Because the truck is already there. You get in the truck and drive it. It's the same way with the entire universe. It's not the person. It's what you latch on to. A truck driver latches on to the truck. And the truck driver knows how to steer the truck, how to start it, stop it, make it go down a highway. And that truck driver can take a very important load of goods to one point to another. And that's what Dr. Wilson was doing on the shows she was on. And the ideas that she said she got from me, that she was trying to transfer to people. But people are not used to it. Why? Because people are used to following people, particularly black people. We have been trained to follow a master. I mean, we've never known anything else. Because in the system of white supremacy, the master was white. And we're trained, well, master said this, master said that. And in the case of a female, I mean, she's a master too. Well, the mistress says this. You know, Miss Ann says that. Miss Gloria says, Miss Scarlett says, she said this, and that's gospel. So we got in the habit of being fascinated by people rather than look at what does that person that you're following follow? What does that person follow? Follows the logic. If it's making any sense at all, if the person is making any sense, then logic came with the universe. Logic was here before the person got here. The creator of the universe created a thing called logic, mathematics. 1 and 1 is 2 for everybody. It's not reserved. But black people got this thing of, oh, my leader died. Oh, somebody shot my leader. Or my leader had a heart attack. Or my leader fell into the ocean. Or the plane went down. Oh, now it'll be 1,000 years before we'll get another one. Oh, so I'll just sit on the side of the road and wait. Black people have been trained to think like that. Oh, if we had another Dr. Wilson, and I'll be out of here shortly. Oh, well, Neely Fuller, I mean, you know, he was around a long time, but he was beginning to catch on too late, and now he's gone. So, well, maybe, you know, I can take his place. You don't take anybody's place. You already got your own place. All you have to do is follow logic, folks. I'm saying this to the whole world. 1 and 1 is 2 for everybody. Look at what the leader follows and follow that. That way you won't get lost, ever. Because logic is here forever. Either something works or it doesn't. Once you latch on to something that works and keep working it, it'll work for everybody. But black people have been trained not to understand that at all.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you, Stan from Pennsylvania. You're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. You have any questions or comment, you may elect to dial 516-453-9921 and be sure to press the number 1 button and wait in line. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. And it probably will not be read today, but you can certainly do that. And also, you're able to get on the chat room. And as usual, my chatters are blowing this thing all the way up. And you can get in on the conversations there. They're good conversations. And occasionally I'll something to come out, and I'll select one and read something and all that. I see you, Justice Warrior. I got you. All righty. Thank you for listening. For new people, if you just joined the program, again, you're going to hear a lot of different terms that you may not agree with. We're asking that you use your logic, because the one thing that we are interested in, you want to have constructive results, CR. That's another term that you'll hear, constructive results. You will hear that. You will hear that term, constructive results. That's what we're striving for. Okay, going out to Long Beach, up early in the morning. Marcus, see if I can get you in here. Okay, Marcus, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Wait a minute, buffering. There you go. Go ahead, Marcus. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. My question for this morning is, Mr. Fuller, what are some of the ways or tactics that you have seen or heard that the white supremacists use to sabotage a black person from doing something of constructive value?
Anything that they can. See, as long as the black person is not doing anything constructive, unless that constructive thing that is being done is helping to give strength to the system of white supremacy. Just like any prison master. As long as the prisoner in a prison camp is doing what the warden says do, go down and work in the wood shop. And, of course, we need some woodwork done. We're going to make some ladders and whatnot to go up the wall to repair the barbed wire. So they're going to be wooden ladders. So they'll pick prisoners to go into the woodwork shop and make the ladders so that the working crew can put up the barbed wire along the walls. That's helping to make the prison stronger, the barbed wire, so that the prisoners can't escape, because they have to go through that barbed wire that's being put up by the people who are using the wooden ladders to put up the barbed wire, and the wooden ladders were made in the prison carpentry shop by the prisoners. So it's the same way with black people on planet Earth. As long as black people are doing something that's making the system of white supremacy stronger, that's okay. All right? And it's constructive, because black people learn to do carpentry work that they didn't know how to do, because we're prisoners. And they don't let us do anything until they get ready to let us do something. Okay? Prisoners just wait for people to give them orders, who are the prison masters. But you go ahead and learn how to do that, because you need to learn how to do carpentry work if you don't know it. Anyhow, that can serve a purpose later on for you, like was shown in Shawshank Redemption. People learn things in the prison library, including how to get out of the prison, as the character in the movie showed. He said, it's a book in the library that shows you how to make a prison break. They let us have the library, so we bring books into the library, so the library can have books that'll also show you how to break out of prison, which there were novels and whatnot in that particular movie, Shawshank Redemption, that would show that. So you have to see, logic is about connecting things. This connects with this, and this connects with that, because all of the universe are just a whole bunch of things laying out there, raw materials, that people are supposed to, and animals and creatures, connect. So you say, well, if I do this, and I can do this, and if I do this, I can go to the moon and back. That's making connections between things that are already here. You're looking at them all the time. But you may start figuring out how one thing connects with another thing. And that's how you're able to what? Do things. The people who put together a recipe in a kitchen, it's the same thing. You have beans, you have tomatoes, you have olives, you have some spinach over here, and you say, maybe if I put all this together and add some water, I can come up with something called, I'll call it soup. And sure enough, when you do it, eureka, you got soup. But it wasn't soup before you put it all together and connected those different things. The logic of the universe is the same way. All the things that you need are lying right there in front of you. Sand, water, wood, rocks. And people sit down and think and start saying, well, if I do this, and I do that, and then I do the other, I might can have what you call, I'll call it a house. And that's how the first house was built. People were looking at the materials all the time. They were there. But they thought about thinking, something that the white supremacists never want a black person to ever do. Then you figure things out. You make mistakes, things fall down on you and all like that. Somebody tried to put wings on a bicycle, thinking that they could fly. It didn't work. So they did a little more thinking. They didn't stop thinking. It's called going back to the drawing board. Well, that didn't work, so back to the drawing board. See if I can try something else.
Yes, sir.
It's the same way.
Same way.
In answer to the question. That's the procedure.
Yes, sir. All righty. Marcus, you know what? You don't have to be a stranger, brother. But you're not a stranger, so thank you for listening. Thank you very much. Okay, let's do this here, Mr. Fuller. On page 171 and 172 of the revised copy of your book, you mentioned the four wants, and I bring that up in relation to this question here. Anonymous wrote, they do it for fun. The question was, Mr. Fuller, does the fact that racist man and racist woman who will practice racism, even when it's seemingly against their own self-interest, is explained by the fact that they often will do it just for fun?
Sure, they like destruction. They build to destroy. Anytime they build something, they intend to destroy it eventually, because that's that God complex. God gives people breath. I breathe. Neely Fuller breathes. And he giveth breath, and they say in Old English, taketh away. So the white supremacists look at that pattern. See, when you start getting that emperor complex, like the old Roman emperors, they start talking about, hey, you think we can be gods, not just emperors? I mean, we've gone as far as we can go. I am the emperor. Everybody bows down to me. Everybody's fascinated by me. Everybody wants to come around and be around me. They want to touch even my clothing. I mean, they have a heart attack just touching me, touching my clothing. I'm the emperor. Ooh, the emperor. They like that. They get carried away by that. And the next thing you know, walking around in their imperial palaces and whatnot, like the ancient Romans and the ancient Greeks, and all people with a whole bunch of power, have everybody just worshiping them, they start thinking, it's not just enough to be a person, an emperor or a king. How about being a god? Oh, yeah, that's what I want to be. And people like Livia, the Empress of Rome, the wife of Caesar Augustus, I understand, she was asking one of the emperors, one of the people she helped to make emperor, Claudius, please, before I die, make me a goddess. Make me a god. Oh, I want to be a god. It's not enough to be the emperor's wife, an empress. Oh, that's all right for Earth, but I want to have domain over the entire everything. I want to be equal to the Creator, or even greater than the Creator. So, Claudius, please make me a god. Now, that's in a series called I, Claudius, which I saw, which is on my movie list. People can see that scene.
Yes.
And so the white supremacists, in answer to the question, have that kind of complex. They have reached that state. They say, hey, not enough just to be people. People, I mean, hey, that's, I mean, people are limited. People die. Gods never die.
Yes, sir. Okay. Okay, let's go right here. Before hang on, Gregory and Swa and Austin. Austin, you're going to be next here after this here. Let's see here. Let me get his name here. Okay, Brian. Brian says this, Mr. Fuller. He had to revise his message, but he was referring to the word black, and he says this. He says, see if I can revise what I'm saying. And a trick question in the VGQ is optional. He says, is Mr. Neely Fuller a Mason or a member of a fraternal order? Yes or no, please.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
And
okay.
I keep looking at the back of the book to remind myself of who I am. And it says, about the author, I, Neely Fuller, Jr., the writer, author of this book, have been, like millions of others, a long-time victim of and servant to racism, white supremacy, in all areas of activity. My experiences, observations, and our studies have led me to believe the following. And then I go on to talk about why I wrote the book. But how do I identify myself? A long-time victim of and servant to white supremacy. That's all Neely Fuller has ever been. That is my title. Now, I've been given a lot of titles, including the N-word and all like that, which means the same thing, victim of white supremacy. That's all that means. When somebody calls me the N-word, they're just saying I'm a victim of white supremacy. That is accurate, and I say so in the textbook. I'll own that title. They don't have to force it on me because that's the truth. All right? Once I'm no longer a victim of white supremacy, I'm not the N-word anymore. Nobody is. Once you get off under white supremacy, the only thing that makes you the N-word is that you're under the system of white supremacy. All right. According to what? Logic. And so
sir.
I am a victim of white supremacy. I'm not an American. I'm not an African. I'm not an Asian. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. Now, I've called myself by a lot of titles because the white supremacists say, I'm going to give you this title, Neely Fuller. That's a title. That's a name. So I accept that because I'm in their prison. I'm in the prison called the system of white supremacy. So when the warden says this is your prison number, I have to take that number if I want to eat. So I'm a servant to the system of white supremacy. I've never been American because I've never qualified to be an American. According to whom? The white supremacists themselves. They say that that's what I'm not until they say that's what I am for their convenience. Then they'll call me something else. Then they'll call me something else. Then they'll call me something else. And whatever they call me will fit according to them. But what I really am, and this is the truth, and if I was in a court of law, within the next 15 minutes, I was hauled into court. They say, what is your true identity? I'll say, I am a victim of the system of white supremacy, a prisoner of war, and have been before I was born, because my mother was born in prison. the prison system called the system of white supremacy. That's all I've ever been. I've never been nothing else.
Oh, yes, sir. Okay. His second part of that was, why does Mr. Fuller refer to so-called black people as black or non-white, which are descriptive terms and not legally binding concepts in the courts of law, because the word black is defined in law dictionaries as Silvus mortis, and he has that in quotations, which means legally dead. For example, so-called Chinese people do not refer to themselves as yellow. VGQ added with that, so-called black people and or non-white people in this area of the northern hemisphere seem to need a legally binding nationality before they can even begin to produce justice in the area of law or any area in a legally binding manner. Also, the concept of African American seems legally questionable too. Thank you, Brian. He wants to. I guess that was his VGQ on the last part there.
Sure.
But the question was, why does Mr. Fuller refer to so-called black people as black or non-white? Which
because I choose to.
Go ahead.
That's the answer. See, I can choose to do that. But now the black person who says, hey, I ain't black, don't call me black. So what does the code say? The code says, I am duty bound to call that person by any name that that person chooses to call him or herself. I'm duty bound to do that. So if the caller says he or she is not black, the code says, by all means, call yourself by whatever name or title that you want to call yourself. And Neely Fuller will call you by that name or title that you call yourself. That's what I will do. Because the compensatory code, that's why I say we need a code. You can't get a conflict there. Because I'm going to call you by the name or title that you want to be called. Now, if the person standing next to you said, well, don't call me by that name and title that you just heard him mention, because I ain't going by that. So I'll say, well, what name and title that you want me to call you, sir? If it's different from the name and title of the person standing next to you. And then that person would give me the name and title that they want me to call them. And they might even qualify it by saying, now that's my title for today. Because I belong to an organization, we change our title every day. So I got a new title every day. So don't call me tomorrow what you're calling me today. I'll tell you what to call me tomorrow. And Neely Fuller is duty bound by the code to call that person by the name and title that that person wants to be called. Now, why is this? Keep down confusion and conflict. That's why.
Yes, sir.
It eliminates it. All right.
Okay.
So,
go
any
ahead,
black person can call themselves anything, or any person that don't want to, who's been called black and don't want to be called black no more. The code says, hey, everybody is duty bound according to the code now. If they want to buy into the code,
yes,
to call everybody, white, non-white, anybody, whatever they want to be called. If a black person says, I want to be called white from now on, and tells me that, I'll say, okay, is it Mr. White, or how do you want me to phrase it? Mrs. White, or just white, or just your color designation? Yeah, I'm black, but I'm white. And at the same time, I'm white and I'm black. And sometimes I'm both at the same time. That way, that gives me control. Oh, okay. That's your logic? Yeah, that's my logic. Okay, you're entitled to your logic. You're entitled to see things you want the way you want to see it. The code says that's the way you're supposed to do it. You go according to logic and see how it works. See if it produces the constructive result that you're after. That's the criteria.
Constructive
result.
Okay. Before we get to your book, Mr. Fuller, Justice Warrior in the chat said this. Okay, Mr. Moorish Nation, Mr. Bobby realized that this brother Gmailing is in a Moor, M-O-O-R, and they get caught up on the term, quote, black, end of quote, which is a waste of time and energy, which is why they've never gotten anywhere with their agenda. To them, black is evil and bad, and white is good and pure, shaking my damn head. That's to this guy, Brian, who always Gmails with that BS. Okay, Justice Warrior. Wow. Chat room, hot. Mr. Fuller, we got about 8 minutes, but guess what? We're going to give you most of those 8 minutes to talk about this book that you've been talking about. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Well, most of the things, in fact, all the things, directly and indirectly, that we have talked about so far this morning are in the textbook for victims of white supremacy. Now, that's one of the titles of the book. Textbook, workbook, for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism, and racism is white supremacy. There's no other form of racism or racism other than the system of white supremacy. You can't have two supremes when you start talking about race and racism. If you're talking about singing groups, you might have 3 or 4 people or something like that. But that's a commercial type thing. That doesn't apply to race according to what? Logic. But you have white supremacy, so you can't have another supremacy. You can't have an American supremacy. You can't have an African supremacy. You can't have an Asian supremacy. If you got white supremacy on the planet, that's exactly what that means. That people who are classified as white are supreme over people who are classified as non-white in all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Now, you either have it or you don't. Some people say there's no such thing as that. I say that there is such a thing as white supremacy, and that's what the book is about. So the book is not for people who are not victims of white supremacy. It says so on the cover. This book is for victims of white supremacy. So Neely Fuller says, that's what I am. So people who are in the same situation I'm in, we should be trying. We were born into the system, and we should spend all of our time and energy as best we can trying to replace that system with a better system, which would be what? Justice, because the system of white supremacy is a non-just system. It mistreats people. It guarantees that people will be mistreated. And this planet should not be dominated by people who guarantee the mistreatment of people. You should have people who are guaranteed to run the planet the way it ought to be run, and that is no person being mistreated, and the person who needs help the most getting the most constructive help. Now, that's the compensatory definition for justice. And the textbook for victims of racism is all about that. Goes to show you how the individual person can bring that about and be both for white people and non-white people, male, female, young and old, universal people, universal man, universal woman. That should be, according to logic, the ideal. We don't have anything on this planet close to that, ever. Nowhere in history has there been anything close to it in recorded history. What you call people who are universal. no one being mistreated, ever. And people who need help the most always got it. There's nothing in recorded history of anybody ever having done that. But it can be done, logically speaking.
Yes, sir.
Because all the materials are here. Now, the textbook for victims of white supremacy can be gotten by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And will help, supposed to be written, to help each and every person classified as non-white get through whatever problem he or she may be having in the system of racism. And everything is connected with the system of racism.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a problem, it is connected with the system of racism, or if you are a person, quote, unquote, of color, and you're on planet Earth, there's no way to escape it.
Yes, sir. Okay.
And so we need a way. This book is helping to dismantle that prison system called the system of racism. Go to producejustice.com.
producejustice.com, especially for the new people who are listening for the first time, producejustice.com. Okay, now we also are on a 2-hour stream here, so we have about, in this particular hour, we have about 2 minutes in the stream left. Quick question, Mr. Fuller, and before we close out this hour, Gary Jones wanted to know, Mr. Fuller, I believe in forgiveness, but is it appropriate for victims of white supremacy to forgive their white supremacist abusers?
Yes, if they ask for it, we can forgive them, but at the same time, we'll say, now, with that, first of all, we ask a question. See, getting back to that flag thing again. Question mark. Everything starts with a question. We have to have their definition of forgiveness. Their definition, not mine, not what I heard, not what I read, but the person that you're talking to. Because each individual white person may have a different view of what forgiveness is. So if a white person says, I did something and I want you, Fuller, to forgive me. And I'll say, well, what does that mean? You know, it's something that you want me to give you, and it's in the form of something called forgiveness. Forgive. So what does that mean? What is it you're really asking for? What is it you want me to do? See, it always gets back to that doing part. Do. Well, I want you to forgive me. Oh, okay. Consistent of what? What do you want me to say or do? See, find out what the person is saying, because this is important. Because later on the person will say, oh, when I asked you for forgiveness, what you gave me was not what I asked for. I didn't want it in that form. It was something else I wanted you to do.
Yes, sir.
You thought that you could just say, I forgive you? No, it was a whole string of other things that went with that I asked you for. Didn't you get the message? See what I mean? Now you got confusion.
Okay. All righty. Well, guess what? That's going to conclude the first hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller. We thank you for the pleasure of your time and that you listen. So thank you. We don't take that for granted. If you have to go, sorry you have to go, but you got to do what you got to do. But hopefully you will be able to tune in next week and listen to the show, hopefully for the entire 2 hours. But thank you if you got to go. If you are going to stay, we have another hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. So hang on, and in about 10 seconds, we'll commence with the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show here on Blog Talk Radio and also on ProduceJustice.com. Thank you. All righty. Welcome to the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Contact number is 516-453-9921. Make sure you press the number 1 button, and you will get in line. And when your time is called, I'll cue you in. If you have a question or a VGQ, please, ma'am, please, sir, please make it short, because our time is short. They got that clock on me, so we got to stay within that stream. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. You can do that, and chances are it will not be read today, although some have been read, but most of the time they're not read. You can also join the chat room, and my chatters are blowing up. They are blowing up all over the place. Greetings, Swah. Gotcha, man. Gotcha. There are so many that are in there, and good conversation. Justice Warrior has really been good today. Thank you, my brother. Thank you very much. But there's so many that are there. But you can go to the chat room. All you have to do is go to the blogtalkradio.com platform and go to under Produce Justice, so I'm told, and then just click on Produce Justice, and where it says chat, and then get in there, and there you go. You're in the chat room. That's the easiest way to do that. And by the numbers that I've been getting weekly, that is just, as it's been said, off the chain. It's been good. And occasionally I will read those. All righty. Let's proceed on with the show. Go to Cleveland, and guess what? We got Austin. Austin, you are on. Go ahead, sir, with your question for Mr. Fuller.
Yes, hello to Mr. Bobby and hello to Mr. Fuller also. Good. And thank you all so much for taking my call. Thank you. I had a question for Mr. Fuller today in regards to the certain uses of words that black people have a tendency and a habit, like he mentioned earlier, that we use all over the world. And my question to Mr. Fuller is, could you explain to the non-white world and particularly to the black listening audience why it is illogical and outright silly for black people to call themselves kings and queens when what we really are victims of racism, white supremacy?
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
Well, we just look at what kings and queens do and look and see if the black people you see on the planet, for the most part, are doing what kings and queens do. I mean, what their existence is like. And then those who do call themselves kings and queens, like here in the year 2021, I don't know how many people of color who are classified as royalty. Quite a few, I understand, but not a whole lot, but a substantial number as kings and queens and emperors go, et cetera, royal families. I understand there are some on what we call the planet Earth. But the question is, are they subject to the dictates of the white supremacists? And I say if they have color in their skin, the evidence shows, this is not Neely Fuller's opinion, yes. If they have color in their skin, it doesn't make any difference what they call themselves. When the white supremacists come around, they jump. They better. They start bowing down. They may not do it physically, but they are doing it when the white supremacists look around and say, you know what, I'm going to run a railroad through here because it's in my interest. Or I'm going to dig some holes in the ground called mines because you got some diamonds here. I want these diamonds. And I'll come to your airport, which I built, because you don't know how to build nothing. None of you dark-skinned people, okay? And I'll land there, and you can be out there, and I'll call you by whatever title you want to be called, your Royal Highness or whatever you call, whatever your people worship you by. I'll go along with that. It's all play acting. It's all theater. don't amount to nothing. But I am going to dig up everything around here where I think there's some diamonds, including all up under your palace, if that's where I find out it is, and I want it. I want all those diamonds right up under that palace that you got, and I'll build you another palace, you know. So not to worry, and your people will still worship you. But when I come around with your black king self, your black queen self, you will worship me, or you will be dust around all these diamonds that you got here under the ground that you didn't even know were here until I told you. That's the way that works, folks. I've never seen it work any other way.
All righty. Thank you, Austin from Cleveland. Mr. Fuller, Black Tony, don't be a stranger, Austin, because I think that was the first time I had you on here. Black Tony had this to say, Mr. Fuller, about the show. He said the show has popularity because Fuller's statements are the truth. The logic suggests that it is either true or false. And thank you, Black Tony. I've heard this before about your suggestions, that are either true or false. And using logic, you have to look at the evidence to see if the statement is true or false. And if it's true, then it's true. And looking at the way that the calls have been coming in and the analytics bear this out, it has to be, because the analytics are up. The analytics are up, and people want the truth, and they're getting the truth. Now, they may not agree with it, but it's the truth. So, if you do, well, what do you do with that? But thank you, Black Tony, for mentioning that. COA said this, good morning. Could you ask Mr. Fuller, when he made a speech in 1969 about white people should just go ahead and kill all non-white people instead of complaining of their condition, what was their response? I heard him say that in a past program. This was one of his first speaking with Francis Cress Welsing back in 1969 at a college, I believe. That's all the Gmail said, Mr. Fuller.
No, that was University of Maryland, 1969.
Okay.
I was not with Dr. Francis Welsing. I was with a person who became a judge. I forgot his name. The courthouse is named after him. One of the courthouses here in Washington, D.C. Odd enough, he was the head of the NAACP at that time. I was sent in the place of Dr. Nathan Hare, who was a professor, I think, at Howard University at the time. And he later on became a professor. He and his wife, Julia Hare, are professors in California somewhere. And this was many, many years ago. I mean, I intend to get in touch with them, too, because I think they're still around. But I haven't gotten around to it. But they can call me anytime they want to. I mean, if they have my number, which is pretty well, they can probably get it by going to producejustice.com, because Dr. Nathan Hare came to me and said, Fuller, you got some material here that I think may be worthy of hearing. I have an engagement at the University of Maryland. This was 1969. He says, but I can't make it because I have a previous engagement. So I was wondering if you could go out there and fill in for me. And so I had never made a talk before. I was very nervous. And I said, well, yes. I mean, because I'm convinced. He said, well, can you just do the best you can? I said, well, I'll just do what I do. I'll just go out there and say what I say, and and see whichever way it goes, because I want to say what I say. I don't have a book out yet, and I don't. At that time, I didn't even intend to write a book as such, and I didn't intend to make speeches. I was trying to get somebody to write the book that I wrote, because I thought a better writer would do a better job. But at the time, I didn't even have a book. I just had a bunch of papers. So I went to the University of Maryland, and I went out there and I made that talk. And it was right after the riots, 1968. This was 1969, after Martin Luther King was killed. It was right after those riots. So things are a pretty big mess, and I was pretty well fed up. So I just told the white audience, most of the white audience, I said, rather than just keep going around saying, well, if I can say the N-word, well, Negro this, Negro that, even though I didn't say Negro, I said the N-word. I said, N, Negro, 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 Negro. I said, since it seems like the white people are just sick of us, tired of us, rioting, begging, don't have a job, filling up the jails, don't know how to do nothing but jump up and down and spin around on our heads and run around killing each other, and then after burning down everything, then begging for some soup or begging for somebody to come and build everything back up so we can burn it down again. I said, since you say we are completely worthless and just a whole bunch of people on this planet with our black selves who are just in the way, why don't you just kill us all and be done with it? Just give every white person a gun and say, go out and kill every black person that you see until they're all gone, and we'll pile them up in a big fire and kill us all. I said words to that effect. I don't remember the entire speech. I said, and then you'll have the entire universe to yourself, and for what you did, you can explain it to the Creator, because you won't explain it to us, because we won't even be here. And let's just stop this argument, all this going back and forth forever. And the audience looked at me, most of them, the white people, was 90% white, maybe more. And the ones up in front looked at me with amusement. And then I got it. Here's the way that amusement came across to me. Negro, don't you know that we could do that? And if we wanted to do that, we would have done it a long time ago. But we don't want to do that. We enjoy playing with you people. And that did a whole lot toward forming my view of what white supremacy is really all about. They like watching us dancing on the end of a string. In other words, it's like fox hunting. How are you going to fox hunt and you kill all the foxes? You can't say tally-ho, there blows, and jump over the hedges on a horse and chase the fox down and got your dogs helping them, just like they did with black people and still do. Get the dogs chasing black people, and then they catch them. The dogs say, here he is, and they catch them and shoot them. And they catch the fox and shoot it. Or they catch it and put it back in a cage. But the fox is in a cage.
Yes, sir.
And then next fox hunting season, what do? Let the fox out of the cage, and they run and chase it down again. They run till the fox is exhausted. They do this, black people, the same way. Why? Because it's what? It's fun. That's
fun. Yes, sir.
White supremacy is about fun.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Fuller, and for answering that question. A quick update, and thank you, Justice Warrior. Everybody, or not everybody, but a lot of people have been asking about the extermination man who was basically a regular when Mr. Fuller and myself did our program, the compensatory concept, on talktohim@radio.com, and he would always call in, and give his VGQ. and he was affectionately known as the Extermination Man. Well, Justice Warrior gave me an update and said that the Extermination Man can be heard on WVON, and I looked that up. That's in the south of Chicago. At least that's where the transmitter is. If anybody knows him or heard him or knows about him, relay the message that that people have been asking about him, and that we are on a new platform on blogtalkradio.com, or he can go to, blogtalkradio.com. Have him get on that and get in contact with the show, because a lot of people have been asking, about the Extermination Man. So thank you, Justice Warrior, for that update on the Extermination Man. And if you haven't heard him, he's really something. Going out to Minneapolis, Black Mermaid in the house. You are on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Yes. Good morning.
Morning.
My question is, what needs to happen to stop the white supremacists from having racist thoughts and practicing white supremacy so that we can have a system of justice?
Oh, we need a code, because the white supremacist system is put together by a very well thought out code. Code just means when you do it, it works. An electrical code, a plumbing code, every time you do it, it works. The white supremacists think like that. They're the greatest thinkers on the planet. They don't do anything that doesn't work over and over again, like black people do. Black people do things over and over again that do not produce constructive results. But we'll say it's our tradition, it's our culture. Non-white people, people of the Indian tribes and whatnot, they have held on to things in a different environment that doesn't work in that environment. They have to bring back the environment that they had before, which does not exist, because the white supremacists have changed it. But they still want to do the same things. Now, it worked at the time because they weren't in contact with anyone except people who were like themselves. Once you get in contact with other people, things start changing. But black people, non-white people, have a tendency to try to hold on to what we call our culture. The white supremacists say, we make culture. We don't hold on to anything. Our culture becomes whatever we are. Whatever we are culture. So whatever we are doing is culture. But black people have this idea that culture is something that you find up under the desert somewhere. You go looking for it. And it's buried with your ancestors. And you got to dig it up in order to get it back. The white supremacist says, hey, we walk around every day making culture all the time. Because culture, they know, they're logical. See, culture is what you do at the time that you're doing it. If you're paddling a canoe on the water, while you're paddling that canoe, that's your culture. While you're paddling the canoe. Once you get out of that canoe, put the paddle down, and start walking across the desert, walking across the desert is your culture. The canoe and the paddle is no longer your culture. Why? Because that's not what you're doing at that moment. Your culture is whatever you're doing at the moment you're doing it. It's not some mysterious thing that's buried up under a redwood tree somewhere in the Mojave Desert or somewhere. That's what black people have been taught that culture is. So you got to go looking for it. And the white supremacists, they crack their sides laughing.
Yes.
We got that black guy going down the road looking for his culture. He's got a big pack on his back. He's going to go overseas, go all over the desert. Boo-hoo-hoo, I can't find my culture.
Okay. Wow. All right, Black Mermaid, thank you. And you know what? You better not be a stranger. Thanks for listening, dear. Yes, produce justice. You got that right. Produce 21, rather. Didn't mean a damn thing, did it? They were just a sacrifice. You have to go in the chat room to understand what we were just talking about. A special shout out to all my people in the DMV, the district, Maryland and Virginia. I think that's what they call where you resided, Mr. Fuller, the DMV, affectionately called that, but love it there. Hello, Cornelius Green, former Ohio State University quarterback in the DMV, and Frank Ski and Nita Brown, all of them. Yeah, okay. Let's do this. That's WHUR, by the way. Speaking about that, Mr. Fuller, well, I guess it hasn't. No updates on your visit, excuse me, to the show you do on WOL. Any related matter yet for the Carl Nelson show?
No.
Okay.
I wasn't on for the month of November because they have their own schedule. Usually, I'm called if whatever reason they call me, but it's not a fixed thing that I will be on every month.
Oh, okay.
That's not fixed. It's something that Mr. Carl Nelson does with the approval, I think, directly, indirectly, of Dr. Kathy Hughes, who is the owner of the station, and her son, Alfred, and they allow me those 2 hours, which I really do appreciate, to come on their show every now and then. I am invited. Now, I've been invited on many, many other shows, but on account of I have an agent now who makes these decisions about what I can do and what I can't do, and give me reasons why. In order to keep down, for one thing, a lot of confusion that was going on prior to the new arrangement, and having my own vehicle now called ProduceJustice.com. But Dr. Kathy Hughes has been very, very supportive down to the years. On the for years I was on the Mark Thompson show and the Brother Bay show, and all on Dr. Kathy Hughes stations, WL, Brother Bay, Dr. Mark Thompson, and
was the Black Eagle on there, Joe Madison? Was he ever on there?
I was never on the Joe Madison show, but Joe Madison was on the Kathy Hughes networks for quite a few years.
Okay, very, very, very good.
And Eric St. James, there are a lot of recordings done with WL with Eric St. James. He was an interviewer, like you are, Mr. Bobby West, on this show, Mr. Eric St. James was the host from my being on WL for a number of occasions, a great number.
Okay. Good history. Good history. Maybe one day I'll get to meet Miss Hughes, her son Alfred, and of course Carl Nelson. Okay. Anyway, moving on here. Okay, we're gonna go to H-Town, and that's where Big John is at. Okay, John, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning.
Grand Rising, gentlemen. And
yes, sir, John.
Mr. Fuller Jr. is in rare form this morning. And whether you consider this, Mr. Bobby, VGQ, I just had a thought while listening to you and him recount historical context. Would he be so kind as to consider a project that would compile all of those recordings and hopefully make them available for our children and grandchildren? You don't have to respond right now. Just like I said, if you want to consider this a VGQ.
Okay.
Here's the thing. Just recently, a week ago, we were talking. Malika Shabazz was passing, and as I said to you last week, that was on the anniversary of the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
Yes, sir.
I don't know how familiar you are with this particular quote from Malcolm X. I'm paraphrasing and taking it somewhat out of context, but you never see a white aborigine. Now, I understand and appreciate a lot of what Mr. Fuller's opinions were this morning, and sometimes it chafes me, particularly about the designation of American. But calling a person something and out of their name is very problematic and has been done only to us as a unique people multitudes of times. You don't see Orientals and so-called Hispanics or even Europeans having multiple name changes. When you want to possibly address that as far as identity or self-identifying, but that's not my question this morning. My question this morning is this. In the context of Kyle Rittenhouse, the McMichaels, Derek Chauvin, I'm quite sure he probably appreciated the so-called ruling with the McMichaels. I think that was a pump fake. Did you know that there were 3 white prosecutors? And I just saw this on 2020 with Deborah Roberts, if you haven't had a chance to see that segment. I'm going to present it this way. If it wasn't for the love of that mother, of Ahmaud Arbery's mother, and the black woman who ended up being appointed the 4th prosecutor, this case and this trial would have never seen the light of day. So I think my question for him this morning is, as he would probably respond and say, everything this system does is to reinforce white supremacy, but what do you feel the pump fake or the deception that's keeping us on the hook from this particular trial's results? And I'd like to stay on so I can hear the response.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bobby, for the time.
All righty. Mr. Fuller?
I don't know. We'll just observe and see what was the result. And there are some black people who say they are elated at the result. And some black people say, well, what about the other things that need to be done? That's just one trial. And different people have different viewpoints. And so far, that's what I've seen is the result. Different people have different viewpoints about what the status is of what we call, quote, unquote, race relations really is between white people and non-white people, not only in the cases of these trials, but generally speaking, because that's really, according to the code now, that's what it comes down to. I just observe myself. I'm duty-bound to observe everything that's going on. But at the end of the day, I just have one question. Do we still have the system of racism? Or do we not have it? That is the criteria.
Yes, sir.
According to the code. Do we have a system of justice worldwide? No racism nowhere? Or don't we? And the answer is no. Progress, according to the code, is you either have it or you don't. You either have racism in the world or you don't. And anything short of the justice system having replaced the system of racism, anything short of that is like nothing has been done at all. See, the criteria for getting rid of racism according to the code, boy, it is rock solid. It is no nonsense. It's not playing games. So no matter how people get to celebrate this and cry about that, and next week, they're celebrating something else, and the week after that, crying about something else. The code position is all those ups and downs, you pay no attention to it at all. It's like nothing is happening at all. Why? The question is, does racism still exist in the form of the system of white supremacy? Yes or no? And if the answer is yes, It's just like nothing has happened.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. You're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. here on Blog Talk Radio. The show will be reproduced on ProduceJustice.com. As a matter of fact, all of the shows are on ProduceJustice.com for a replay, and you can listen to any shows that you have missed. Tell your friends about it and have them give a listen to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller and me, Mr. Bobby, as the co-host. The books and materials that Mr. Fuller has discussed and will be discussing are also on that ProduceJustice.com website. All the books, all the materials, whatever is up and coming is all right there, very professionally done. So that's all you need to do to get to learn more about that. Always asking why and producing justice or results. Got me messed up here. But we want those results, constructive results. Yeah, there you go, Mr. Bobby. Come on here. All righty, chat room is open. You can get in that, and I mean it's blowing up. So many people. Thank you, chatters. Contact numbers is 516-453-9921. You can get in line as let's see here, Mike and Swa and Ray in Dallas. You can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. You can do that. Probably will not be read today. Okay, we got 28 minutes. Let's do it. Let's go to Jersey. As a matter of fact, Jersey City. Let's see if we can get Mike in here. Okay, Mike, we got you on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
It's Jamal.
Oh, yeah, Mike. Okay, Jamal, thank you. Got it.
Jamal.
Okay. My bad. Okay.
It's okay. Greetings, Mr. Bobby. Greetings, Mr. Fuller,
Greetings,
and
sir.
the listeners. According to the compensatory definition of the word justice, which is guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person who needs the most help gets the most constructive help, my question is, in the system of white terrorism, who is responsible for providing and or guaranteeing that justice?
Oh, and everybody, if you say, depending on what you mean by responsible, meaning responding to, well, the code says everybody on the planet is supposed to be trying to produce a planet where no person is mistreated. There's no validity for anybody being mistreated. It doesn't make sense. I mean, it's enough here for everybody, more than enough. I mean, people who are starving, actually, if everything was done the way it ought to be done, every person on the planet could have food running out of their ears. There'd be more food they could ever eat, and more coming down the bin. I mean, they'd have to be running from the food. There'd be so much food. I mean, if somebody wanted to produce that much, somebody with power. But the white supremacists, they want to ration everything. Curing the disease, I don't know. Let's see now. Well, we got this COVID thing. I'm going to see if, maybe I give you half a train load this month, and maybe next month you'll get a full train load, and so you can sweat that out. And it depends on how I feel when I get up in the morning. I mean, I got plenty of it. I got plenty of vaccines and whatnot, because I know how it all started. I know how to stop it too, But y'all don't know this, Or maybe it is that way, and maybe it isn't. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they're telling the truth. That's another thing. The white supremacists, by being masters at what they do, you never know when they're telling the truth and when they're not. And that makes a master. A person who you depend on. You don't know when they're telling you the truth and when they're not. And the white supremacists are great truth tellers. They tell the truth about a lot of things. But then, somewhere along the line, they will say 10 things that are true, and then they'll say 4 things that are not true. This is false as they can be. And they'll take those 4 things and mix them all up in the 10. Now you got what? The one thing that is the secret to their power: confusion. Now, am I answering the question? Because, another thing, Neely Fuller puts out confusion, because sometimes he'll start out answering the question and didn't answer the question. What was that question? Because I've forgotten it. You got to watch Neely Fuller.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay, well.
What was that question? Do you remember, Mr. Bobby?
I absolutely do not, and he's not there now. Because there's
I got a terrible habit of doing that. I'm saying that to the whole world audience now.
Yeah.
I'll start out answering the question, and if you don't watch me, I'll fool around, and I'll tell you something that's interesting.
Yes.
But it won't be the answer to the question.
Okay.
I do that a lot. Sometimes I go back and listen to myself, and I said, I didn't answer that question.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Nobody caught it.
Yeah,
You're
I got him
supposed
back.
to catch this stuff. I'm going to tell you why. To the whole world. The white supremacists are good at that.
Good. Yes, sir.
Boy, they know how you will ask them a question, and before you know it, they'll have you laughing and dancing and whatnot and think that you got the answer to the question, and they didn't come anywhere close to answering that question.
Yes. Okay, I have Mike back, Mr. Fuller. Let me see if I can get him in here and he can ask that question again. Mike,
yes,
I got you back. Okay, go ahead.
I got to learn how to do
it's
that.
Jamal.
Oh, I mean Jamal. Why do they keep
Jamal?
Okay, they got Mike on the screen, but okay, Jamal. I'm gonna take. Okay. I'm gonna say it's my fault. Go ahead, Jamal.
Okay, I'll repeat the question. The question is: in the system of white terrorism, who is responsible for providing and/or guaranteeing justice?
Oh, the people who are most powerful are always, like the captain of a ship. You go aboard the ship. I'll give this example. And the sailors are drunk. Now, an inspector of that vessel does not go around talking and to each sailor and trying to straighten them out. Get up, get back on your post, do what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be on watch, or you're supposed to be in the kitchen cooking, or you're supposed to be swabbing the deck, or whatever. No. An inspector, someone who's making an inspection, will go around, look and see all those drunken sailors. The ship has not left the harbor. It goes straight where? To the captain's cabin. Why? Because the captain is the captain. Now, in this planet called Earth, the white supremacists are the smartest and most powerful people on this planet. That hurts a lot of people's feelings, but this is not about feelings. This is about whether it's true or false. Now, so, who's responsible for everything that black people do, whether it's constructive or non-constructive? The white supremacists. Black people out here killing each other and all like that. According to the code, I blame the captain of the ship, the white supremacists. These black people wouldn't be killing each other if you didn't want it, if you wasn't going to have it. You know how to stop that. I mean, quick, real quick. I mean, you'll have black people, I mean, all of them that's out there killing each other, you'll have them hugging and kissing each other, if that's what you want. See, we have to understand who's really boss on this planet.
Yes, sir.
So the only reason you have this death rate, whether it's from COVID or anything else, you go to the captain's cabin and say, what's going on your ship? They say, well, you can go out there and check and see what's going on. Say, no, this is your ship. You're in charge of this ship. You took charge. You took charge. You said to the world, you are the captain. So anything that's happening, whether it's correct or incorrect, you know all about it. Why? Because there's no people more powerful than you are. That's the equation. That's the codified logic in answer to the question.
Yes, sir.
Who's responsible? Depending on what you mean by that word responsible, that's a slippery word. But who's to blame for anything that's going on this planet among non-white people for doing something that shouldn't be done? Whether it's mass shoplifting or burning up a car or fighting with a law enforcement officer, who's to blame? The white supremacists. Why? They are our bosses. They train us. It's like they train the animals. Because that's what they say we are.
Yes, sir. So logic suggests that. Thank you very much, Jamal. Got it right. Okay, now before I go to you, Swah, let me do this. Roland, got your question here. Roland says, I have a question for Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, what do you think of those black folks who have been appointed to go against other victims of white supremacy? How would going against other victims of white supremacy benefit these individuals?
You don't go against them. That's why I have the movie on my list, Shawshank Redemption. Handed a frame, a white man in a prison. He looked around from day one, since he had never been in a prison before, and he decided, oh, these prisoners, they're going at each other. And they'll come after me. I'm quite sure they will, which they did. They sodomized him. That's getting pretty serious. You get sodomized over and over again. And you try to keep yourself from being sodomized, but when you do, there's nothing you can do because it's being allowed. The warden Norton in that movie, he said to Andy Dufresne while he was in solitary confinement, he said, I can put you back down in that cell where you will get sodomized again and again and again. You think you've been hit by a freight train. See, if you get on the wrong side of what? Me again. Or I can put you back up in my office where you have a nice cushy job, won't be out there sweating in the fields or up on the rooftops, on the farm or in the carpenter shop. You'll have a desk job, and you can get some of my leftover food. See, this is how black people are on the planet. That's why I recommend that movie. If you understand the movie Shawshank Redemption, you understand black people and the prison system called the system of white supremacy.
Okay. Thank you for answering that
question. They
question.
have the power.
They have the power.
And so black people, if you go against black people who are trying to hurt you, the white supremacists will say, no, I'll take care of that if I want to. All right? Now, if I don't want to, it just means you're going to get hurt. That's all. Because if you do anything without my permission, even in retaliation or getting back at them, you got to answer to me if I want you to answer to me.
Yes, sir.
And I might do that at any time. I decide which one of you black people can mistreat another black person. I decide that. Because ain't none of you all in charge of nothing, and you definitely ain't in charge of me. I'm a white man.
Yes, sir.
I am a white man in the system of white supremacy. That is a white woman. And Negro, don't you ever forget it. And those of you who have paid the price.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. The prevailing thought in the chat today is obvious that, and many have said it, but here it is. Stay on code. Stay on code. Now, I'm going to mess this name up, but not on purpose. LaSherry and Sarah, you got it. You're a new member. Thank you for your listenership. Okay, here he is. They've been on him, but he's been producing justice. Go ahead, Swah. You're on.
Greetings, Mr. Bosby. Greetings, Miss Neely Fuller. This question comes from my cellmate, and she wants to know if in a system of justice, will non-white people who've had their land stolen from white supremacists receive their land back?
In the system of justice, what?
Will people who've had their land stolen from white supremacists receive their land back?
I'm not hearing you at all. I hear something in the background.
Will the people who had their land stolen by the white supremacists get their land back? Is that what you said, Swa?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If the white supremacists want, white supremacists distribute land. That's what supreme means. Supreme. The captain of the ship. All parts of the ship and everybody on it come under the captain's authority. That's what the planet Earth is. It's a ship. It moves like a ship through space. And there is a ruler on this planet, an earthly ruler. There's a greater ruler called the creator of the entire universe. I mean, that takes in all those trillions of stars out there and whatnot. But the white supremacists said, I'm in charge here. And they even say that the creator of the universe put me in charge. Many white supremacists will say that. I'm a white man. I've been ordained by God to take charge of all you black people. All right? And I'm doing an excellent job of it. What's the beef? What's the complaint? I was assigned by God. I'm a Christian. Or, if they want to be, I'm a Republican, or a Muslim, or a Buddhist, or all of them. But the main thing I am, I'm a white man, and I'm not only white, I'm a white supremacist, which means you black people, wherever you are, whatever you do, you better get my approval. I don't care where you are on the planet, directly, indirectly. You better get my approval, because you don't want to hear from me. Because I can put something on you that you cannot defend against.
Yes, sir.
You don't have that much sense. All of you put together don't have enough sense to even deal with one of me.
Yes, sir. Mr. Fuller, in the years that you and I have been doing this show, particularly on when you and I were on Talk Team and Radio, and I would ask a lot of questions, as I still do, but one of the things that has been a prevailing question throughout the years that you and I have been doing this is, producing justice. Even in the chat room, somebody will ask, well, how do you do this and how do you do that? And I remember for myself when I asked you a similar question, one of the most profound things that you said, and I found it to be exactly true, is that you said, tell the truth. Just tell the truth. Simple as that. Just tell the truth to yourself or to other people. And I have found in that, for me, producing justice. Now, I'm not asking, necessarily your opinion on that, but when you said to tell the truth, and this is before I get to you, Ray, why was that? Why was that so important and logical for that?
Well, truth is just that which is. That's the definition. That which is what? Whatever it is. An electric light is an electric light. You just call it what it is and try to get other people to understand that it gives off light. Through what? Through a thing called electricity. You can get light from a candle, but that's not electricity. That's a flame. And you will light the candle, so it's a different procedure for lighting a candle and getting light. You strike a match to what they call a wick, and it's got a little thing on it, I mean, that you light at the top, and that's a candle. But you don't strike a match to a light bulb. You turn on a switch, because that's what? That's the way it's coded. And to get candle light, you have a different procedure, a different code for getting candle light than you do from a bulb, a light bulb that you bought in a store, and you put it in a lamp, but you don't light a match to that. It's another procedure. You have a wire attached to it that's attached to a wall that has a codified relationship to power in the universe that most people don't know about. You have to go to a lot of school for that. Of course, you have to go to a school even for a candle, maybe. Some type of school. Somebody has to teach you. The average person doesn't know how to make a candle from scratch. All right? But candles have been made. So everything in the universe is coded. Everything that works. And this is what you call truth. That which is. That which is what it is. A lamp, a candle, a code. It is what it is. And you try to find out the difference between something that works and something that doesn't.
Yes, sir.
And the thing that works should become a part of your code if it produces a what? Constructive result.
Constructive result, yes, sir.
That's the main thing. Center on those two words. Your truth is supposed to lead you to what? Constructive result.
Constructive result, absolutely.
If you don't get a constructive result, and you get a non-constructive result, then you go back to what? Doing some more studying, which means asking some more questions. That's what study is, asking questions.
Yeah, exactly. And I have some proof if somebody really wanted to see it, but right to my left, I'm looking at it, and I still can't hardly believe it. But anyway, Kwaku, listen, brother, I don't think that I'm going to have time to get to you, but I tell you what, my producers will fix it so that if you call in next week, when you call in next week, 'cause I'm changing all my ifs to when. When you call in next week, they'll put you right up there, because I don't think we're going to have time to get to you. So I just want to get that reminder. Hey, Ray, Dallas, got you. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please, sir.
Good morning, gentlemen. Mr. Fuller, is the lack of taking the initiative to improve one's individual health and well-being the absence of self-respect for some black people?
Is what now? Is asking.
Yes, sir. Is the lack of taking the initiative to improve.
The lack of what?
Taking the initiative.
Taking the initiative.
Is
the lack of taking the initiative
to improve one's individual health and well-being the absence of self-respect for some black people?
I guess. I don't know. Well, you have to ask the black people who you're talking about. If you want answers about a person, or if you want the codified answer about self-respect, I think that might be the issue. I don't know. I don't know the essence of your question, but if I think you're asking about self-respect comes from yourself. You don't ask anybody to give you respect. Now, there are people who will disagree with that, and that's okay. But according to the code, a lot of people kill each other by, you don't give me no respect, I'm going to kill you. You respect me. Now, you say that to me one more time, that's showing disrespect for me, and I ain't going to put up with it, and I am going to take you out of this world. You are not going to be breathing no more. Now, a lot of people say that they want respect from someone else. The code says you never ask anybody for respect, and never demand it either, so-called, at gunpoint. Why? Because that's something you give yourself. Anybody who can give you respect can take it away. So if you give yourself respect, and how do you do that? Not lying to yourself.
There you go.
That's what the code says.
Yes, sir.
See, when you don't lie to yourself, you got all the respect that you need. You'll never have to ask anybody for respect, including yourself. Why?
Yourself.
Because you have made up your mind you're not going to lie to yourself. So that's
it.
all respect is. We have to know what it is we're asking for. It doesn't have anything to do with courtesy.
Woo! Hallelujah. Exactly.
It has respect has nothing to do with courtesy. Now, if a person is discourteous to you, the code says you pay no attention to that at all. That doesn't mean anything. The person is just giving you their opinion of you. So what? If they want to say that they call you a name, like name calling, you might consider that to be discourteous. And the code says what? If, for example, if Neely Fuller, if somebody calls me the N-word right in front of everybody, a white person does it, on the job, how does Neely Fuller react? I don't want to bat an eyelash. In fact, they can write it all over the walls. Neely Fuller's just going to come in there and start doing whatever he does every day. And it's all over the walls. I'm not going to run down the hall screaming. He didn't make a sound. See, that's what I mean by being codified.
Yes, sir.
You control what's going on. You control to the best of your ability. And that's something you have control over, how you're going to react to the N-word. So if a person calls my mother the B-word, while I'm with my mother, she's passed on many years ago now, but if they did it, I wouldn't ask nobody to respect my mother, and they better not do it again, or even because they did it, I'm going to take out a knife and stab them to death. You don't call my mother that. You can call my mother anything you want to. When she's with me. And if she's codified, like I am, she'll just stand there and look at you. And if she was around now, I would tell her to be codified, regardless of what calls you, what anybody says. You just look at them and keep doing whatever you're doing. They're not supposed to be controlling your universe with words. See, every black person is supposed to be a master of words. You never, ever let a word master you under any circumstance.
Under any circumstances. And we're going to leave it right there. Thank you, Ray from Dallas. Thank you. Kwaku, you were to be next, but we don't have enough time to do you justice. So as I indicated, the call screeners will make sure that when you call in next week that you will get a priority with that. Listen, all the books and materials that have been mentioned on this show, you can go to producejustice.com and you can get it there. Mr. Fuller, we got a little less than a minute. The final is yours.
Well, I'm just going to reiterate. Go to the book. I've said quite a bit today, but I didn't say enough to produce the most constructive results, like replace the system of white supremacy with justice. So I say that in order to get there, from here to there, I tried to write a book, and it's called The Compensatory Counter-Racist Code, a textbook for victims of racism. Just go to Produce Justice and try to come up with some ideas about what you can do each and every day. Not necessarily just following everything that's written, but get some ideas about how to go about producing what? Constructive results.
Constructive
results. If you do anything that produces constructive results, you are fighting the system of white supremacy big time.
All righty. And that's where we'll leave it. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Producers, Moon Pie, Robert, thank you all. and we hope to see you next week on the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Thank you for listening, everybody, and have a constructive week.
ProduceJustice.com.